All right. So today on the Latter-day Saints podcast, I'm incredibly excited to have the arguably the most charismatic survivor and podcaster to date as a guest. He's recently been seen wielding large pieces of reclaimed wood and powerful drills. The most recently also seen as the most talked about tiger in my household since my 4-year-old discovered Daniel Tiger. And this is the very best spicy Brice Izyah.
Yes. Thank you, Brandon and Brendon
It's
for having
confusing,
me.
man. It's
Yeah,
confusing.
no,
It's
my
one letter
brother's
off.
name is Brendon, so you would think that I would have that name correct. But yeah, no, I'm excited to be here.
How are you today? This is a stressful time
It
we're
it,
having.
it is, and especially in Philadelphia,
No
we
kidding.
are holding the power that be.
Yeah, our
So
two cities,
yes,
Phoenix and Philly.
Phoenix and Philly. Shout out to AZ, okay? Because AZ really showed out this year. But yeah, it really is stressful. But I've made a commitment since election night that I have not been watching the coverage at all. I'm not. So I just get random texts from my mom and my friends keeping me abreast to what's going on. But
yeah, I hit refresh probably every 15 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm the exact opposite.
I think I'm the perfect middle ground because I'll check in, but I understand what you're saying, Brice. Like I voted. There's nothing I can change at this point.
Right.
So it's kind of just like hold
let
your
it
breath
be.
and pray.
But what I will say is count every vote. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even understand the concept. And I actually read a meme earlier today that I was like dying at, that it's just funny that this base that when you say Black Lives Matter, they say all lives matter. Okay. So, and if that's what you say, then that's fine. But listen, if you say all lives matter, then guess what? All votes matter too. So count all the votes.
Yeah, I agree. You got the bell. Yeah, the all lives matter thing has always struck a chord with me. Obviously, the meaning, if it's just by itself, is fine, but it's used as a recourse against the Black Lives Matter, and it's just something that needs to go away, and I wish it would.
Yeah, but I mean, it's rooted in our country's history. And so I always say you have to know your history to know your future. And so it's just important that, which is why I'm glad I have allies in you guys that, we don't look alike. We come from very different backgrounds, but I'm so happy that there are people in this world that really get and understand what it means to be an ally. And so I'm thrilled to know people like you and to know that people like you exist and that are willing to use your voice. So that means an awful lot to me. So I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, so true. And Brandon has an excellent podcast on that too, about, what it means to be a gay ally, but so much more than that too. Like, yeah, we come from different spheres and we may not have all the same experiences, but what does it matter? Brice, you're an amazing guy. Brandon's an amazing guy. So why can't we just get along with that?
Right.
And Brice, I have to say, it was your allyship podcast that I think it was with Wendell. So I started doing a lot of those sort of things as well after that, as kind of an inspirational sort of thing. And you actually listened to one of them, and it was you gave me some feedback. That was beautiful.
Yes, I love it. I love to. It's weird because it's weird for me in the sense that I don't feel like I'm doing anything. I feel like I'm honestly just living my life and being very transparent. But that seems to ring a chord with people. But again, I honestly don't feel like I am doing much. I just truly feel like I am just living my life and sharing my stories. And I'm just blessed that I have amazing people around me that support me for who I am. And, what I realized through my podcast and through being in a quote unquote public figure, even though I ain't no public figure, I'm just a regular old person, but that people really get something out of that, and that they, sometimes I'm the only Black voice that people hear. Sometimes I'm the only gay voice that people hear, and that resonates with people. And so for me, it's a lot to take in because I'm always like, again, I'm just literally living my life and just living in my truth. And it took me a while to actually be able to live in my actual truth. And now that I've come to that, there's no turning back. And so I'm just happy that I get countless emails and DMs about people saying, they feel listening to me encourages them to come out, or listening to me makes them have a conversation with their parents about like political things that they would never ever do. And I'm just like, it's just so weird because I never imagined that I would be in a position that I'm changing lives. And even if it's just one person, for me, that's a huge difference. So it is definitely an interesting experience.
So you actually,
good.
this was
Go
like
ahead,
a
Brandon.
subtle point that you brought up that I thought was really interesting about, living your actual life. What do you think the difference was when you started realizing you were living your actual life rather than a more muted version of it?
I mean, I've grown up in Philadelphia my whole entire life. So it is, and I'm the youngest. I've got 5 brothers and 1 sister, and I'm the youngest. And, just growing up in the city and coming from a Black family, there were just a lot of different things that I had to deal with. Growing up, we struggled, which I didn't even realize as growing up, just what I thought was normal. But I in my life, I feel like I have faced a lot of different things, and a lot of the times I would not be myself, or I would be a more muted version of myself because I'm like, I don't want to, cause any trouble, or I don't want to. But the older that I get, even though I'm not that old, I'm still in my early to late 20s to early 30s. But, you know, I just realized that why would I not just be my full authentic self? And again, if somebody is going to accept me for the openly gay Black man that I am and be my friend or be a supporter of me, then that's what it is. And if they're not, they're not. And I don't even really know when I came to that conclusion. Even when I was on Survivor, I don't think that I was truly my authentic self. And even like the person that you saw on Survivor, I muted down an extremely lot of myself, even though I was, spicy Bricey was still out there. But I didn't want to be, going on, and mind you, I'm going on a tangent, so follow
You're
me because,
good. You're
I
good.
just talk in circles. But
I'm along for
going
the ride.
on Survivor, I knew that I was going to be the first openly gay Black player, and I wanted to make sure that I represented my community so well, and that I didn't want any controversy, and I didn't want, any of that. But ultimately, me being my true authentic self is a representation of those communities. And sometimes I feel like there's this stigma of like what a Black man is. And I'm not your average Black man, but whoever is the average Black man. And, living in my truth and being authentic to myself really sheds a light to other people that, wow, there's diversity in the Black community. Wow, there's diversity in the LGBTQ plus community. And that's where really kind of drives me to continue to just be my authentic self and just really project that. And why shy away now is really what my mantra has been.
I love that, man. That's so inspiring.
And just like obviously you're like incredibly charismatic person, but I think just how obviously comfortable you are in your own skin is something that has made you just wildly popular with your fans. And I think that is what you kind of alluded to is what makes people identify like this is kind of the person that I want to be around. Is this person comfortable in their skin? They're outgoing. And like you had kind of alluded to is that sometimes this is the only gay man, the only Black man that might be in their lives, whether it's only, over airways. But yeah, I think you using your voice for these communities is just huge because this could be somebody that's, from the Midwest or from, somewhere that doesn't have these populations, and you're opening their eyes to issues that they didn't know existed. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, so do I, which again, sometimes I don't really like to think about it because it can put such a weight on you like, oh, I'm carrying, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm speaking for the Black community. I don't want to make it seem like I'm speaking for the gay community. I want to make it seem like I'm speaking for myself. This is my voice, and this is from the life that I've lived and the experiences that I have led. This is what you see is what you get is really kind of like what I try to talk about, because even in these communities that I represent, I'm still a minority. And even in the Black community, there's still a stigma with Black in the gay community, especially with Black gay men. So I have to overcome hurdles in that. Even in the LGBTQ community, there are hurdles. The LGBTQ community is, a white man's community. It's not really for the minorities. And so it's just constant hurdles. And so I just try to just live in my truth, and I talk about my experience. And another thing that I realized that I didn't really realize was that I'm comfortable in my vulnerability, that I can talk about what I struggle with. I can talk about like depression. I can talk about if I'm not feeling great today. And, you know, people tend to resonate with that like, wow, I wasn't really feeling that way. I was feeling similar, but I didn't want to say anything. And I love the fact that I do have a platform that I can talk about things that don't normally get highlighted. And even if they get highlighted, it's like the sugar coat, like, no, bitch, I'm gonna give you the real of what I'm going through and how I'm experiencing. And it might be different for you, but sometimes people really can kind of gravitate to people talking about issues that they are dealing with that doesn't normally get talked about. So, and for me, my podcast is like therapy for me. Like when I go into my podcast studio, it's literally like I'm talking to a therapist, which is myself or my listeners, that I really can just, again, just be my authentic self. And so I'm so happy that I have a platform, and I'm so happy that I'm able to connect with amazing people like you guys.
Yeah, and I think just showing how normal it is to talk about that sort of thing, whether it's depression or anxiety or that sort of stuff, is so important. I had a really good friend of mine. I hadn't heard from him. I used to talk to him like every day. I hadn't really heard from him the last couple months. He called me today and he's like, "Brandon, I've been dreading this conversation." And I'm like, "Why?" I'm like, I you know, I've been really busy, so I didn't know there was something going on with him, which isn't a great excuse. But he's like, "Yeah, I had another, you know, bipolar episode, and I've been kind of off the grid for the last few weeks, and just been in a deep depression." And he like felt like he was letting me down because we had worked on this other podcast together, and we're actually going to be opening up a clinic in a few months, probably once this kind of pandemic wave passes. And he felt like he was letting me down by having this depressive episode. And I'm like, man, this is normal. This is you. And it's okay to have that. And you're not letting me down. If any of this ever happens, great. If it doesn't, I'm not counting on it. It's just fun stuff to have, you know, in our back pocket. So I think you using a platform of however many thousands of listeners you have is so awesome, that it just to normalize those sort of feelings, because everyone has them to some extent, you know?
Yeah,
for sure.
And Brandon, to your point, there needs to be a lot more people like you. I think our generation, for the most part, is becoming more accepted and more acceptable to like therapy, whether you find it in your own way through doing a podcast, or you actually go see a therapist, or you reach out to a friend. It's becoming a lot more normalized, and that's a great thing about our generation that we're starting to see. And I think it's healthy, you know? You can't deal with everything on your own. And Bryson, I'm so glad you're able to do your podcast and give an outlet. And it's for you, but for anyone who listens, it might be an outlet for them as well.
No, definitely. 100%. And I guess this is the social worker in me. And sometimes I regret it, but not really. But with my friends, especially like I have like a core of like 5 friends that I probably talk to like every day. But I always do this thing, and like even like Wendell will hate it, but I like we'll be talking, and then I'll be like, the sharing and caring table is open. You got anything you want to put on the table? And that's really like to signify like, bitches, you going through something, or like whatever. Like it's really like to say like, hey, I know we're just having a normal conversation, but also the sharing and caring table is open. So if you're going through anything, and a lot of my friends, they hate it because I oftentimes will do it, but it's, you know, every once in a while during a conversation, a friend will be like, well, actually, I was. And I think for me, I'm a Pisces, I'm a water sign. I'm very much a nurturer. I'm very, very much a feeler. I listen. I love to ask questions. So don't think that you could just like ask me something and I'm not going to have 137 follow-up questions. But I think that's just the nature in me. And especially like being a social worker, when I'm going into these homes and I see something that is not right, you know, I have a way about asking questions like, oh, it's cold in here. I like your jacket. Do you always wear your jacket in the living room? Or do you guys put on the heat ever? Like, you know, and that in my field is way different than someone coming in and being like, do you guys have heat? So I ask 1,000 questions, but you know, I'm always such a good listener, and I'm always just available to my friends. As much as my friends support me, I try to support them in the way that I can. And sometimes just being a good listener. And I think that people get lost in being good listeners is that you feel like not repelled, that's not the word. You feel help me out, Brandon and Brendon. Not repelled, but you feel like you have to have a response. But sometimes just listening.
Compelled.
Come on, Brandon. Thank you.
I got
Compelled. But no, sometimes being a good listener is like, I actually don't have anything to say to that, but I want you to know that I've heard you and I hear what you're saying. And for me, I've always got listening ears from my friends. And what I realize through my podcast, because a lot of the people that listen to my podcast, we go together. So, and this is something so foreign to me, but a lot of people don't have a solid support system. And that to me is like, wow, like that's, but I mean, it is what it is. But I'm just really blessed that I really do have a great support system, but people don't. And I get so many emails from people that listen to my podcast and they're like, I really was touched. And I always kind of I stress out because I try to respond to everybody. And sometimes I actually realize that I have to take a step back and just, breathe and live my life. But, people don't have that. And so it's just great that we're creating these places and spaces for people to feel like they're being heard, even if you're listening to a podcast.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that you get those kind of emails because the way that you tell a story, right, it's so engaging. Like you're just such this natural storyteller that it almost feels like I listen to podcasts usually in the car, like that you're just sitting next to me telling the story about how you lost your keys in the U-Haul. And it was like this 10-minute story and I'm on the edge of my seat, which probably isn't good because I'm in a car. But I think if I told that story, everyone would have turned off the radio in about 45 seconds.
Yes. And I'm still waiting for one of my credit cards to come. Okay. But yeah.
So getting back to your social work too, one thing I thought you said was really interesting. And I think it was this last one that you put out, was it yesterday or the day before, about, cause I'm an ER doc, right? So just like you, a lot of times I see people when they're at their worst and they're not always, they don't always have their faculties about them. So when you were talking about how, when people approach you yelling,
right,
you need to approach that with more of an understanding of the situation, not with fear. Hey, I'm going to call the cops. This is a fucked up situation. I thought that was that resonated very much with me because we get that all the time in the ER and it's so difficult not to react in a negative way.
Right. And I get that all the time. We're literally the nickname in the community that I'm in is we're the baby snatchers. And that's what people perceive of us. And it's actually, no, we don't want your children. If you knew how much paperwork that actually was, no, not at all. It actually is easier to keep them in the home. So work with us. But yeah, people, a lot of the times, and especially you as an ER doctor, you've got to meet people where they're at. And I come from a very loud family. So and for me, which might be harder for you, but any home that I ever go in, I always try to go in with the mindset, this is my aunt, this is my uncle. So for me, it automatically takes I don't want to say anxiety, but it takes me off the edge because if I treated my clients like they were just regular clients off the street, then I might be more prone to bitch, you ain't gonna cuss at me. But if in my head, I'm okay, this is Aunt Belinda. And although Aunt Belinda is yelling and possibly disrespecting me, she is my aunt. So I'm gonna give her a second and I'm gonna allow her to yell at me and I'm gonna respond back and try to get a dialogue going. But and a lot of the time in the field that I was in, in the field when I was in with social work and especially in child welfare, it's a lot of older white women and we're in an urban setting. So I understand they are nervous to go into these communities and nervous to go into these homes. But just because somebody is yelling, it does not mean that they're not a good parent. Does not mean that they can't safely manage their kids. Again, it's taking you out of it. And I think that I'm so good at that is because I truly feel like I come from a community that is just not seen of or heard of. So I'm used to not being heard and seen. And even tell another little anecdote, with Wendell, it's one of my best friends. And so we've got a lot of I mean, I don't know,
I don't know if you can see, but I have a beav hat.
Not the beav hat. Oh,
I got it.
Oh,
I bought one of his basketball
but
hoops when he was making those, and they're so dope.
wow.
My 4-year-old loves it.
That is so
Yeah.
dope. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I helped with a couple of them. I might have sanded that one that you got.
Ooh, I got number 2. Which
Yes.
one did you sand?
But for me, we've got a lot of business ventures together and we do a lot of things, and I will come up with ideas. And when me and Wendell were first friends, I would tell him about this, and I don't think that he really actually saw it. But the closer that we became friends and the closer that he felt more, like, I don't want to use the word protective over me, but I think that he came to realize, like, we would like go to some meetings and I would pitch an idea and I would say it and they would have no response. But I would then, Wendell would say the exact same thing, and they would be like, oh, such a great idea. And not that they knew who Wendell was and not that they knew who I was, but it's just me being this gay Black man, how I am perceived. I don't know what it is. And this is something that I still struggle with to this day. And which is why instead of getting mad at it, I try to figure out the best ways how I can go about it. So now when I know I'm going into the things, I'm like, okay, you'll say the idea or this. And so it just brings me back to my point of social work, that I can identify with the person that feels like, in order for us as social workers in their home to hear them, I've got to scream as loud as I can and maybe even try to intimidate, because in my mind, that will get them to understand and hear that what I'm saying is important to me. And so that's why I think that I'm so successful with that. But yeah, it's definitely a thing.
I really like that, kind of applying a family member to your clients. And I think that's very relatable again to the ER, because it really humanizes the person in front of you. Whereas if it could just be a case number. So like a lot of times in the ER, people refer to as, oh, the belly pain in 14, or, oh, the ankle injury in the green zone. Like, it dehumanizes. So I think that's a really good way of taking kind of that part out.
And it's not, it won't apply for every case, because let me just tell you, sometimes the broken foot in 3 is just a pain in the ass. Like, that's just, it is what it is. But, you applying the best effort to try to work. And so for maybe 8 years, I worked part-time in a psychiatric hospital. And so I worked in the admissions department. So it wasn't like an ER, but sometimes in the community that I was in, they would come to us like we were the ER. So yeah, it just would, it was a lot. I could think of sometimes I always would hate, I don't know if you experience this a lot, Brandon, but when it gets cold and there's a cold blue, and so we can't turn anyone away. And so a lot of the times the community knows that, and they'll come in like, I'm feeling like I want to kill myself. I'm like, well, I mean, do you really? Because I mean, if you really want to do that, would you come to a psychiatric hospital? And I would sometimes spend 20 minutes, and my supervisor will always hate this about me, but especially when it will be like a cold blue, or in Pennsylvania, we call them cold red, when it's over 100 degrees and we can't turn any way, because then we become like a shelter. But I would spend so much time with some of these people that I know were transient, and that they were homeless and they're literally just coming in. But it's like, listen, my friend, if you are looking for a place to stay for the night and you want a hot meal, if that's what you are here for, then bitch, tell me. But please do not come in here saying that you want to harm yourself, because honestly, that creates 8 hours of work for me.
So much resources. That's what happens in the ER. I say, don't say you have chest pain. You're gonna
just
say you're hungry. I'll give you a turkey sandwich.
Right, and you can sit in the lobby all night. But so but again, and kind of sort of spending that, and my supervisor will be like, no, you've got to move on to the next. I'm like, no, you don't understand, because if I move on to the next thing, then this person will be here, and that's triple the work. If I can maybe just figure out that this person is not wanting to harm themselves, I don't have to do a risk assessment. I don't have to search the end of the world, and I can just give them a microwave dinner and a blanket and put the TV on whatever channel they would want to be on, then my night will go a lot smoother. And I worked the 3rd shift. So it's, you know what that shift is like. So
well, thank you for doing that for so many years.
Yeah, I can try to do what I could do, just for a little bit.
Let's get into a little bit less stressful conversation. So get back to Wendell. I love your guys' friendship. I love your guys' tweets to each other and the Instagram stuff. Like, how did your guys' friendship arise?
It's funny that you say this. So actually, it became about from Survivor. So I'm a huge Survivor fan. Y'all know I was the third boot. I've made third boots cool again. And
Tragic.
so,
I wish you'd play again.
Maybe one day, someday. If not, I'm completely happy with having played and that in the past. But I'm very active in the community. Like, I'm not a recruit. I actually wanted to be on the show. I love the show. And so I would always, I would go to like Eliza's house for like the wine and cheese Survivor nights with like Stephen Fishback and all of those. And I just got so tired of always like having like to drive an hour and a half to watch the show. And so I was so excited when one of the fans like DM'd me and was like, there's a Philly boy and that's going to be on the next season. And I'm like, what? Send me the information. And so they sent me like Wendell's information. And it's such a small world because like Wendell and I actually ran in some of like similar circles in Philadelphia. Like it wasn't the first time I met him, but it was the first time that we actually like met. But we've been at parties together. We have like, I went to Temple. He's got a lot of friends that went to Temple. So we ran in the same kind of sort of like circle, but we never formally met. So I actually like sent him a message like, bitch, I heard you about to be on Survivor. And he messaged me back. And from there, we like just became friends, like, like how the survivors do, we become friends. And that's another thing in the Survivor community that bothers me is that, well, it bothers me and it don't bother me because now I know you're like, what the hell's he about to say? Because I'm all over the place. But the Survivor community is a very tricky thing because I'm going to pause the Wendell story for 1 second and just say that this Survivor community is a very tricky community in the sense that we literally are all from different walks of life. And we have this commonality that is Survivor and that we all kind of bond to that. But Brandon and Brendon, let me just tell you, this election time has really kind of like pushes you to your brinks of just trying to be the best person that you could be. Because for me, it's like, how can you say you love me, but you support somebody that hurts me? So, and it's just when you see these people that come out and like talk about different things and not even just with the election, just all of this other crazy stuff that goes on. It's just like, it really causes you to think. So the Survivor community is a very tricky one. So back to the Wendell story. So we just became friends. And his season had aired, and it aired around my birthday. And I think I had went to like Columbia for my birthday that year. So I wasn't around for his premiere party, which I felt bad because I'm like, how am I always talking about like, I wish I had like a Philly friend, not to mention that like there's Jervis and there's Russell who are all great. And so Ramona.
I love Russ.
Yes, they're all great. But they just older and have families. So it's not like, so just for Wendell to be like somewhat like the same, it was just like a perfect match. And so I was away for the premiere. So I missed his premiere party. Then when I came back to Philly, we had like a snowstorm, so I couldn't come. And then he was like, well, I'm planning something one night. And I was like, okay, no matter what, I'm coming. But then that night, it literally like snowed like 7 inches. So I texted him and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna be able to come. But I really got in my car. My car got 4-wheel drive. So, and listen, I could whip a car. So I literally like drove 2 hours and he only lived 20 minutes, but with the snow. And so I literally like surprised him and came. And just from that, just our friendship blossomed. And I was very surprised at our friendship because I thought it was just going to be one of those regular Survivor friendships where it's like, hey, we'll take a photo and we'll contact each other when we're at an event or we need you to promote something or, just like that regular stuff. But no, like we just really kind of sort of clicked. Our family structures are very similar. Our friends are very similar. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to actually find a true friendship in Mr. Wendeezy. So yeah, he's definitely a real one.
And you get to use his bathtub.
Oh yes. That is the perk of the friendship because he doesn't even use his bathtub and he's got an amazing bathtub and I don't understand it and I'm a bad person. And where I live, I have an amazing shower, but I don't have like my place is redid. And so I used to have a claw tub. So I was so excited. I loved it. But then when I redid my bathroom, I wasn't really thinking. And so I hate my bathtub. And if I could take a bath, I would take a bath every day. So I just, yeah. Sometimes I don't even tell him. I'm just literally like, he'll come home and I'm like in the bathtub. I'm like, oh, my bad. Sorry.
Do you have a spare key?
I do, actually.
Oh, damn.
Just leave something on the doorknob so he knows not to come in.
Right. Well, he'll know because like I have the lights. It's a bath is a whole experience for me.
Candles are on, the scents.
Music. So he knows. So he'd be like, bitch, what the hell? I'm like, sorry. Now, and that pizza you left in the refrigerator is gone too. Sorry.
That's awesome. Yeah, he seems like a really special guy. So it's really cool that you guys connected and have formed this friendship.
Definitely. And it's great because it is great in the sense that because when we first became friends, and I didn't really know him that well, he was getting, and this happens a lot when a heterosexual man and a gay man become friends. He was getting a lot of, is Wendell gay? Is Wendell gay? Like, and that's for me so annoying. And I always take it so personal because I take it as an attack on me. I don't know why, but I do. And I'm like, I really wish you guys would stop it. And this is why I'm so grateful that he is my friend, because he actually is one of the few, actually I shouldn't say that. He is just one of that should be more Black men that is comfortable in their sexuality. So being attached or be like, someone asking or calling you gay does not affect his manhood or does not bother him, because some people it does. And which is why some people don't befriend people of different orientations than them. And that is such an I just hate that. And I really wish people would stop like I don't even want to say the word shaming, but like stop asking people sexuality. One, it's not your business. And if they choose to share with you, then be blessed that they share with you. But if they don't, then stop asking, because it really is. I hate it so much. And I hate when people like ask that of me, like, is Wendell get like, stop, like that's the rudest thing ever. And why? Because he's friends with me. Oh, I guess a straight man can't be like, you know what I mean? I just and that's where Spicy Bricey come out, because just as protective of Wendell is of me, Spicy Bricey don't play about Wendeezy. And as nice and as vulnerable and all of that good stuff is true, I can still cuss a bitch out. And I enjoy it every now and then. So please don't come for me or my brother or for Brandon or for Brendon at that.
Yeah, we kind of went through the same thing. This is in 2003 or 2002. It was like senior year of high school. 2003 then, when my best friend in high school had come out. I didn't even I was like, oh yeah, this is fine, totally whatever. Because we met at like a cultural diversity camp, and he was like, it's like, oh cool, yeah, you're gay, great. And then so I didn't even think about it. So we get back to school, like once he finally comes out, and all these kind of questions pop up, and then it's like such a ridiculous thing. Like, yeah, you can't be like best friends with a gay guy without being gay, I guess. But yeah, it was 2003 was a whole mess compared to now. But so that kind of I resonate with that as well.
Yeah, Brice, do you remember, if you don't mind me asking, when you came out or who you first came out to?
So, great question. I actually don't ever think that I ever had to come out, because I've honestly been I've honestly been myself my whole life. Now, obviously, through high school, I got teased, and so I tried to, put on a more masculine type of persona, but bitch, ain't nobody was believing that. So I never actually had to come out. But I can say that it was my freshman year in college, and I had came home for Thanksgiving. Now, mind you, I went to Temple, so it wasn't like I was like coming home for Thanksgiving, but I came home for the weekend or for that Thursday, and me and my mom were cooking, and I don't think I was 21 at that time. I think I might have been like 19, but my mom was letting me drink with her. So I was like, oh, okay, yes. Because my mom needed help. We were having a big Thanksgiving. And so none of my brothers were there because they were out partying the night before Thanksgiving. And I'm like home with my mom. But so to entice me, my mom was like, okay, maybe you can have a little sip of wine. And in that moment, I felt somewhat connected to my mom. And I didn't feel like I had to tell her. But I think I had I don't know. I said something to the effect of, I don't even know, something like, girl, you know, you my sister, right? And then my mom was like, I know, Brice, I know. And so that was literally it. But I've never really, I've never really had to come out. I've always been myself. So it's been no surprise to anyone. So I've never actually had to come out.
Well, we
And
should throw you a
also,
party for it then.
yes. And also, I I don't know how I feel about people coming out, because I feel like, do we expect our heterosexual counterparts to, like, you know, when they're 19 and 18, to sit their parents down and be like, hey, mom and dad, I just want you to know I really like girl. Like, you know, like I actually, I
It's
don't like.
funny. It's funny you say that. I held a Sports Center, meeting in front of the entire United States and announced that I was heterosexual. So
Well, I
yeah.
mean, okay.
I'm just
And
kidding.
Brice,
But yeah,
I see both sides of the point. Like for someone like you who is always more comfortable with their sexuality, you know, it's
not always comfortable. I just
not
think that
always comfortable. Okay,
it was
fair.
who I was, and I couldn't, like, I can't help who I am. But
Right.
so,
But
but
then
just
there's some
always.
people who, you know, are a little bit more timid and coming out is kind of a big achievement for them. Just, you know, getting that air out of their chest or whatever. So I think for some people it's definitely a big achievement for them and they feel a weight lifted off their shoulders.
No, I completely agree. But I do think that it is their choice, and
Absolutely.
it is when they feel comfortable. But it's not like they have to do it. It's because they love and respect whoever it is, the family member, friend, and they want to bear themselves like we bear ourselves to our friends. And that's what I was more so getting at, is that it's we don't have to come out to anybody, like, you know. And sometimes in this society that we live in, they expect it of us, and I'm like, no, actually, it's not. You shouldn't expect it. If someone does come out, it's because they care and love you enough to share with you, so you should take it as a present. Okay.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's yeah. You're the person that they feel that they can be vulnerable with, and that's
Right. And they
it's
care
a
enough about
compliment.
you to tell you,
Mhm.
because it's, you know, who they lay down with, who they like, ain't really none of nobody business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember. So I was probably around 19 and my cousin, he's a couple of years older than me, so he's probably around 23 at the time. And he was like, I want you to come over to my place for dinner. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I have something to tell you. And I was like, okay. So I get there and it's him and his boyfriend. And he's like, this is my boyfriend. I'm gay. I was like, I know.
Yeah, like I had a roommate in medical school for 2 years that we all knew, but he didn't want to admit it, I guess. And then after the fact, like 2 years later, like after we'd all moved out, he shows up at a wedding with his boyfriend. And he goes, "Hey guys, guess what?" And we're like, "Yeah, we know."
Right.
So it's pretty funny though. So yeah. I'm actually like relatively new to even listening to podcasts. I'm kind of a late adopter, I guess. The pandemic really kicked that up because I liked to listen to it at work when I was having a little bit of downtime doing notes and stuff. And so, how did the Purple Pants podcast come to be?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because like I love your friendship with Robert, but I wasn't there for the genesis of it. So like how did that come to be? Because you're obviously like a natural fit on the microphone. So yeah,
Well,
let's hear your
I
story.
appreciate that. How did the Purple Pants podcast be? I think maybe in 2017, maybe 16, 17. I wanted to actually come out with a podcast. And so I was like, well, what will my podcast be? And so I wrote down like what I would want the name of my podcast to be, how I would want it to be structured. But I had this fear that it wouldn't be well received. It wouldn't be, not that I need a popular show, although, you know, my podcast has charted several times. And, you know, I'm very proud of the accomplishments that I have, but that doesn't mean anything to me because I be happy if 4 people listen to me. But I just was nervous. I just honestly didn't feel like it would fly. And so when back in whenever my season aired and ended, we had to do exit interviews with Rob. And at that time, they used to fly us out to LA. We had to do this whole press circuit, which was fun. And then for 6 hours, they would lock us in a room and we would have to do interviews like this with just random different stations. And I remember at the time I had listened to Rob's podcast before. And again, I'm actually not a huge podcaster myself. There's maybe like 4 podcasts that I listen to, but I'm not a huge podcaster myself. But I had listened to Rob's podcast a couple of times to kind of sort of prepare. And so when actually Rob came on, I was so excited. And I'm actually asking him questions. And so we always had a good rapport. And since I had been off, he always would ask me back to come on his to break down. Well, it was, and I always like get on Rob about this because it was never to like break down the episodes. It always was like the voicemails. And so then I would, every season I would come on and do the voicemails. And then I sort of had a problem because I'm like, I hate the fact that I'm always being asked back. And my voicemail episode is like at the end of an hour and 45 minutes of him talking to like another survivor. And so I was always like scared to say something. And I'm like, well, Rob, why do I always have to go at the end? So then Rob was like, you know what? We'll just do this as a standalone. And then just obviously my rapport with Rob just became bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And people like, people actually got to see my personality and hear me, unlike Kagian. Because there's a reason why I was casted, okay?
What could that be?
Because I'm that bitch. But no, and so maybe a year and a half ago, Rob, when he used to do his live shows, he was like planning a Philly one. He was so nervous about coming to Philly because he just was not sure whether or not there's a market there. And I'm like, bitch, I'm telling you, there is a market here. I've done watch parties. I know. And then, like, when he was, like, gathering all of his stuff up, he actually had, like, we had this little phone call, and he was just saying that he wants to expand his empire, and he would actually want to know if I was interested in, like, having a podcast on his network. And I'm like, well, actually, let me pull out this notebook from 4 years ago.
Purple Pants.
So, the Purple Pants podcast. And from there, it's just been, so it's not something that I don't know, I say this humbly, and I'm glad that I have this avenue, and I'm glad that it's so amazing, but like podcasting isn't the end all be all for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be a podcaster. But I'm so happy that I have this avenue, and I'm so happy that it's opening so many doors. And I just really look at this as a stepping stone, because for me, first of all, I didn't play Survivor to lose. So for me to actually, like, 1, not make the merge, 2, be a third boot, that was a very hard pill to swallow, harder than coming out to my mom, because I'm a competitor, and I just hate the fact that on my season of Survivor, you don't get to see that. You don't get to see how athletic I am. You don't get to see how strategic I am. You don't, like, I'm just boiled down to this, like, one-liner, which is fine. I get everything that they showed, I gave them, but I just hate the fact that I was not shown in the light that I feel like I should have been shown. But honestly, that's the story of my life. And I'm not asking for pity, but that's just the story of my life. Like, I always can get so close, but it's never enough. It's just for whatever reason. And so it was really hard for me to kind of swallow that, because I prepare for Survivor. Like, I went out there to win. Okay, or at least make the merge. So for me to like to be more popular in the Survivor community than when my actual season was on, just it says a lot. And
wildly popular now.
Yeah,
like
I ain't.
The Survivor subreddit loves you, man. They're like, every time they're like dream casts for, like, it's second chances to, or a game changer. So you're always on like that, or the bubble of like being, considered to be back on for the fans.
I appreciate that, but yeah, I just want this as a stepping stone. And just even for me, however many years later from Survivor, to have a podcast, to have a successful podcast, means a lot, and just really shows me that the sky is the limit, and that I need to continue to write in my journal and continue to execute the plans that I have. And that is really what this podcast shows me, which is why it really means so much to me.
great. And we're in the same boat. We do this totally for fun. I don't want to be like famous or wealthy from podcasting. It's just a fun thing to do to fill the
Right.
void. You know, that's all we're doing.
For sure. And Brice, it's been, what was it, 1 year was in August, right?
Correct. Yes, I celebrated my 1 year anniversary, and I guess the statistics say that most podcasts, it's like less than like 35% of podcasts to make it through their first year. And another thing that I didn't know that people keep telling me is that like most podcasts are duos, like they're not just a one person type show. I'm like, oh, I didn't know
We'll
that.
do a duo podcast.
Yeah, duo podcasts are so out. But Brice, it's amazing that you can tell these 10-minute stories completely by yourself with no audience. Like you have no idea. Like if I was doing this, I'd have no sense of if I was coming off funny or entertaining. And you just kind of ramble off, and it's like it's so engaging. It's so commendable to a skill that is not common.
Well, I appreciate that so much.
It's really funny. Yeah.
So
it's like sorry, real fast, because I don't really watch Big Brother and I don't really watch The Amazing Race. So like I always listen to the first like 30 minutes of your podcast and kind of skip through the Big Brother, and then I always listen to like the last 20 or 30 minutes.
I appreciate that.
So entertaining. Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't really watch Big Brother either, though.
I was just gonna say, speaking of August, that's when the Zaddy calendar was released. Right?
Brice, I got to tell you that I'm applying to Survivor, and
that's where I was going.
My goal is to be in the Zaddy calendar.
It's I can't tell you how. So the Zaddy calendar was like just literally me rambling one day with Rob, and a fan made it. And that kind of like struck a chord with me a little bit, because I'm like, wait, why are you producing my calendar? And so because I didn't even think of anything of it. And then last year, 2020 was the first year that I actually like put them out. And when I tell y'all that these motherfuckers, excuse my language, I don't mean to cuss on it, but they like literally DM me like, yo, why am I not in the calendar? I'm like, listen. I didn't even talk to you before. And literally like people like Gavin, like Winston, and they're like Survivor press interview. They're literally talking about, I really applied to Survivor to be on the Brice Zaddy calendar. It's kind of crazy to me. But I love the fact that I can kind of create these things, and you know, they literally take a life of their own self on.
Who of
so
all
when
the
do we
people
get a
that
full Aussie edition?
If I want to drop no exclusives right now, but yes, this whole Ozzy thing is, and I'm late to the party. But I just say this, I was actually texting with Ozzy like maybe 20 minutes before we got on this podcast, but.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh,
should have brought him on.
No, I want just Brice. So of all the people that DM'd you about not being in the Zaddy calendar, if you can say, who was the most like, why are you even asking me? You're not going to be in the Zaddy calendar.
So I don't want to say that. Here's the thing that I had to explain.
Tell me a season then.
This is what I will say. People think the Zaddy means like, you know, they got to be hot. Like, no, that don't what Zaddy means. Zaddy is, you know, it's an essence, you know. The looks are in the eye of the beholder. But I can tell you one of my most awkwardest stories about someone why they were not in the Zaddy calendar comes from Tyson. And we had an event, we had a poker event in Philly last year. And I'm like, again, I'm a nobody in the Survivor totem pole. I'm third boot Okagyan, even though Okagyan is one of the best Survivor seasons ever. And if you don't believe, you can watch it on Netflix right now. Okay.
It's both me and Brandon's favorite non-returnee season. It's just fantastic. Yeah.
It's, you know, so I'm a part of a great franchise, but a lot of these Survivor players, you know, especially like, I don't want to say, but seasons prior to mine, or people that get super big in the Survivor community, they don't know people. So I honestly did not think Tyson knew who the hell I was. Right. And so when we were doing the events, I like made sure everyone had like hotel arrangements and all of this stuff. And so I wanted to, when Tyson got there, Jervis had drove him to the hotel and I happened to be there. So I'm like, oh, let me come up and say hi. So I'm like, hey, G, what up? And so Tyson drops his bag. And mind you, like he's in a line full of people like waiting to check into the hotel. And so I'm literally like, hey, Jervis. And Tyson like drops his bag, like turns his head and is like, why didn't you ask me to be in the Zaddy calendar? And I was like, ooh.
That's the first thing he says.
That's like literally, I've never met Tyson before. I've never talked to him on social media before. I was like, he was about to get cussed out by Spicy Bricey, but I was like, oh, I mean, 2021, Tyson, we got you, 2021.
His
So, but
sense of humor is so dry too. He's probably just
right. So
looking at
yeah, you are. So I'm like, is he really coming at me right now? But yeah, that very dry. But you know, he is.
So for 2021, I have one, or I guess it would be 2022 by that point. I have one request.
Okay,
if you can get a couple picture of Devins and David Wright, you know, doing like a classic prom pose.
They were our guests last week, and they're just so cute together.
I love them. I love Devins and I love David right there. So amazing. But that actually, thank you, Brendon. I'm jotting that down.
or just like famous duos in general. Like if you have Dom and it might make you a little jealous, but Dom and Wendell would be pretty funny too.
Definitely would make me jealous. I think it would make Dom jealous, but definitely not me.
You could just do a whole couples calendar.
So the evolution, Brendon, is forever going up in the air. And actually, well, I mean, we can talk off air, but I think the Zaddy calendar next year will look a little different, and I'm hoping that it will be a fan favorite. But yeah, I'm definitely thinking of the evolution of the Zaddy calendar.
So speaking of which, whether it's Hot Girl Summers or Hot Girl Summa and Zaddy, how do you?
Wait. We're not about to skip over that. We're not about to skip over that. I'm sorry. Say it again. I didn't hear you. Brendon.
Hot Girl Summer.
No. That's not the name of
I'm not saying it again.
Summa.
One more time. Come on, Brendon. I'm the guest here.
Yo, I'm from Boston. Sorry about the accent.
No. Can I just hear it one more time?
Nah.
Come on, Brendon.
All right. Hot Girl Summer.
Okay,
that was better. That was much better.
So how do you choose who's each month?
Oh. This actually is the most difficult part, and especially giving the climax or the climate of everything that's going on. I have to thoroughly vet my hot girls and my zaddies because they then somehow get attached to me, and I just want to make sure that our values and our outlook on life is the same. But for the hot girl summer was really easy this year. I already knew that I wanted Desi to be on my cover. She had like a photo shoot coming up, and I was able to kind of like just choreograph that photo shoot. And I knew that I wanted someone from the new seasons. So, I mean, this year's was like so easy. But a lot of the people will contact me, or I will contact them. But again, I'm somewhat active in the community, so I always like to like reach out to people, not when I'm just asking for a favor, but just to kind of like check in and, you know, so the zaddies are the more complicated one. The hot girls were easy, and a lot of the women, when I was like, would you be in my calendar? They're like, me? Seriously? Really? Are you? So they were so easy. And I like a diverse group. It's, you know, I want it to be a mix of colors. I want it to be a mixes of ages. I want it to be a mixes of seasons. So it is just kind of sort of compiling that makes it hard. And then, you know, people don't like to share months. So, you know, sometimes I'll send messages out and then I'll get, you know, 15
I don't want
responses.
April.
Right. Well, not even that. But sometimes like 15 people respond back and it's only 12 months of the year. So then it's like, well, damn, what do I do? So just figuring that logistic out. But there is a Zaddy and a Hot Girl Calendar committee that helped me with some things. So it's good to have that rolling. But it
I
can
love
be
that you had Nick from Australia on there.
Yes.
Season 3. That was great. A great call.
All right. Last question about the calendars. And you don't have to name name, but if you could have 1 month up on your from each of those calendars all year round, what would it be?
From this year. Okay. For this year, it probably will be April, Joe Minna, because he really brought the heat and the smoke. And then from the Hot Girl Summer calendar,
Summa.
Summer. I actually might keep it on the cover all year because my girl Desi Williams from Healers, Hustlers, and Heroes really brought the heat and the smoke. Like she really like this. This is one of my best covers. It actually was a cover photo shoot, so it was specifically shot for the calendar. But she really brought the heat and the smoke. But Desi killed it. I think B from Is It David vs. Goliath? She really killed it. Laura Ashley Beck killed it. So there's a lot of couple of months. And then Lauren O'Connell.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. You haven't seen my photos. Oh, wait until you see the photo that Lauren brought it. Lauren.
Well, she's pretty big on Instagram, isn't she?
Yeah, she's very
stopped working.
Big on the Insta. And I got an exclusive Lauren photo. So I might have to send you the calendar, Brendon.
Damn. I mean, I don't know about you.
You guys hear me?
I can hear you.
I don't know about you, Brandon, but I'm always going to be a big fan of Parv.
Yeah.
I don't think you can go wrong.
Well, I ran into some dilemmas with Parvati only because on, Winners at War, she kind of got into it with my brother. So I was nervous about it. But I think the two biggest names that I've had on my calendar, my first year I had Sari, and then this year was being able to secure Parvati for it was absolutely amazing. And I was like so nervous to call her. And I'm like, I've had her number forever, but I'm like, hi Parv, it's Brice. She's like, I know who it is. I'm like, I was calling to hear. I was calling to ask you to be. She was like, yeah, sure, whatever you need, Brice. I was like, yes. So that was great to have her. To have the queen of Survivor on my calendar was amazing.
Oh, she's the queen now. You're throwing out Sandra?
The queen was because my speaker stopped working. Who was the queen?
Parvati.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's queen. Her is Sari.
Sari is queen. Sari is mother queen. And then
yeah, she's got the mom queen vibes.
Definitely would agree.
All right, Brice. Well, we will not take any more of your time. Can we get like a Listen to Latter-day Saints podcast and your okr? I would love that.
Sure. Do you want me to record it now or do you want me to record it and send it to you?
Oh, what you can do it now or do it whatever.
Sure, I can record it now for you.
Hey, you can just say it now.
Oh, all right. Hey, what's up? It's Brice Izyah, and make sure you listen to the Latter-day Saints podcast. Oh, don't play with me. You better listen up. Get up there later and listen to the Latter-day Saints podcast. Oh,
love it, buddy. All right. Well, I really appreciate this time. It's been awesome, and I can't wait.
Sure. Thank you so much. When does the podcast come out?
Well, we're actually waiting on Eric Reichenbach to finish our logo. He's a little bit behind, so
Eric he'd be a little slow, but the finished quality is
the initial stuff's done. He's just kind of filling it in, and we have our first one recorded, and we have 3 kind of interviews recorded. So this will either be on the 2nd or the 3rd episode, which will be essentially a week or a week and a half from when Eric gives us the.
Okay, sure. The only thing that I ask of you guys is maybe it doesn't matter if it's both of you or just one, but if you maybe can record a clip just saying like, hey guys, check out, because I'll put you on my church announcements. And so that will kind of like circle some of my listeners right to you. But we can kind of just talk in email or whenever, but just literally just saying like, hey guys, we have Brice on our podcast this week. Check us out and let them know where they can find the podcast at. And I'll just loop that right into my church announcements, whatever week that it comes out.
Beautiful.
Brandon, do you want to do that? You're a lot better on the mic.
Well, yeah, we'll record it at another time, right? We'll
yeah.
Figure out what we need.
But I prefer both of you.
Okay.
All right.
Brice, this was great.
Thank you guys so much. I greatly appreciate it. Keep me posted. I love to help promote and support. Thank you so much. I hope.
Thank you, Brice. It's been a pleasure.
To try not to hit reload on CNN.com.
Oh yeah. Try not to, but right, it's a lot. But all right, guys, have a wonderful night.
Take care.
You too.
Bye. That was great.